Brian, welcome back. What a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much. I was reading the Wall Street Journal today, and there's a lot of controversy in politics and economics, and it all comes down, in my estimation, to telling the truth. Telling the truth. What is the truth? And whatever the truth is, tell the truth. Don't try to change it or minimize it and so on. And it's the same thing in America. When I began studying, we had 5,000 self-made millionaires. 5,000 back in 1980. Today, we have millions of self-made millionaires. Somebody becomes a self-made millionaire 80 or 90% in sales every 8 minutes. I mean, the statistics are phenomenal. So if you don't become a self-made millionaire in your entrepreneurial business, you should be taken out in the back and beaten with a stick, because because the fact is, it has never been easier. There have never been more opportunities for you to do well in life if you tell yourself the truth. And the truth is, there's nothing replaces hard work from a long period of time. Start earlier. Self-made millionaires, and now I've done a whole several years of research on self-made billionaires. Self-made billionaires have specific habits. I've got them all here written down and laid out. And number one is they get up early. They get up before 6 a.m. Number two is they get started. They exercise, get their body going, and then they study. The average self-made millionaire, billionaire, jillionaire reads 2 hours a day in order to become better. One of the richest men in the world, Bill Gates, reads a book a week. And then what he does is he takes and he underlines all the key points, and then he goes back and he puts all the key points on his website. So if you want to know what Bill Gates is reading, then what you do is you go to billgates.com, and there's his latest book and what he thought were the most important points in that book. Now, if you're not doing that, then you're really not serious about becoming wealthy, because this is free information by the richest self-made multi-billionaire in the world, and he just gives it to you. And people say, "Oh, I think I'll just go have drinks after work."
You know what I find fascinating is, if we go back to the 1980s, it seemed like the majority of the people were not aware of what needed to be done to become a millionaire. Now, that information is available, yet there's also often many people saying slightly different things, and some people are paralyzed from doing anything because they don't know what they should prioritize. How do we overcome this inertia from overwhelm?
Well, let me tell you my own story. When I do a seminar and I design a seminar, in the margin I write MOS, my own story, which is the example of what happened to me. So I never talk about anything that I have not proven to work, and that I don't have hundreds, if not thousands, of people who have proven it to work. I was in Washington at a big conference 3 weeks ago, and this man came up to me out of the crowd, and he recognized me. I didn't know who he was. And he said, "You changed my life. You made me rich." And I have heard that, surprise, surprise, 1,000 times all over the world, every day, emails and letters and communications. "You changed my life. You made me rich," in every conceivable language. Why? And I always ask them why. And you know what they do? They smile like a pumpkin on Halloween. And they say, "It was the goals. It was the goals. Before I listened to you or read your stuff, I didn't know how important goals were." So many years ago, I started off, and I had been broke all my life. I was 35, 36 years old, and I decided to give seminars. And one day, a businessman called me. He had a large multi-level organization nationwide. He had 800 people who were small business people, entrepreneurs, and they're having an annual conference. And he said, all of these people have one common goal, which is to become millionaires in the course of their working lifetime. Can you do a seminar on how to become a millionaire? And I still remember that. And I said, absolutely. Because when you're starting off as a speaker, you agree to speak on any subject that they will pay you for. There's a funny little story that I think of, and it's the story about the priest who has 2 parrots, and they sit on the stand and they pray all the time. Brother Matthew and Brother Paul. And they sit there with a rosary and they pray all the time. One day, another priest was visiting them, and there they are praying away, doing their rosaries. And he said, I'm really concerned about my two parrots because they're so pious that all they do is pray. And he said, well, as a matter of fact, my son came back from sailing, working on a ship, and he brought me a parrot that had been on the ship. And the parrot had learned a lot of foul language from the other sailors. And so he talks all the time, never stops talking. Why don't we bring my son's parrot, put him on the stand between the two pious parrots, and maybe that will loosen them up. So they brought the parrot over, they put him there, and the parrot from the ship said, I'm a whore, I'm a whore, I'm a whore. And the priest was paralyzed. But one of the parrots, Brother Matthew, leaned over to Brother Paul and said, Brother Paul, our prayers have been answered. So I always think of that. I tell this to my audiences all over the world. I say, whenever you go out there, remember, you're a whore. You're a whore. What does that mean? It means that you sell. Your job is to go out there and generate revenues and money. Your job is not to drink coffee and talk to your friends and go to movies in the afternoon. And I know you do it because nobody's watching you. And so your job is to work. And there's a direct relationship between how long and how hard you work relative to others that determines how much you earn relative to others. And this is a truth. Just like gravity is a truth, things fall down. They don't fall up. Your job is to be always doing things to generate money, like that joke. Anyway, so he called me and asked me if I would speak about how to become a self-made millionaire. And I said, of course. And I hung up the phone. And I realized I had been dreaming, that's what we in America do, is from the time we're teens, we start to fantasize about becoming millionaires. And we look at rich people that have beautiful cars and homes, and they're in the newspapers and stories and movies and everything else. And we fantasize about becoming wealthy. So here I was, I'd started fantasizing at the age of 15 or so. And now I'm 36 years old and I'm still in debt. In fact, when I got into speaking, I used to joke, I learned how to sell again. I sold my house, I sold my car, I sold my furniture, I sold everything that I owned and moved into a rented house and just basically worked 16 hours a day for the next 2 or 3 years. However, so I said, okay, so I began to study, I'd call it a full court press. I did a full court press on self-made millionaires. What I found was that there's lots of great research on self-made millionaires because it's an interesting subject. People wrote books and articles and they did university studies and so on, but they found that they had certain characteristics in common. So what I did is I began to write them down, and I came up with a talk called The 21 Success Secrets of Self-Made Millionaires. And 2 months later, I stood up in front of the audience. I had 1 hour to speak, and I went through the talk very quickly, 21 success secrets. And they're very simple ideas. One is dream big dreams. That's the first one. Dream big dreams. Start dreaming about yourself as being a millionaire. Think about it. Fantasize about it. When you see other people who are rich, say, I could do that. That person. 90% of people who have money today were broke when they started. The 80-20 rule is one of the other principles, so that the top 20% of people in our society earn 80% of the money paid out in our society. Every person in the top 20% started where? Where did they start? They started in the bottom 20%. And then they started doing things differently, like climbing stairs. And a week, a month, a year, a few years later, they were in the top 20%, then the top 10%, then the top 5%. But virtually everybody starts at the bottom. So, no problem. If you're broke, good. That's where all the top people started. They started broke, but they made a decision. I'm not going to stay here. So anyway, I gave this talk, and it was so well received, standing ovation. I was asked to give it again and again and again. I started giving it all over the world. I stretched it from 60 minutes to 90 minutes to 3 hours to a full day. I recorded an audio, video. I wrote a book on the subject, which is one of the best-selling books in the world, on the 21 Success Secrets of Self-Made Millionaires. So what I want to do with us in the time that we have together, Jason, is I'm just going to give you a couple of ideas. And if you follow these ideas, these were the turning points in my life. And as I studied the life stories of people who've gone from rags to riches, I find that Virtually everyone had these three stories. And if you look at Bill Gates, why are you rich? 1, 2, 3. If you look at Elon Musk, if you look at Jeff Bezos, you look at the richest people in the world, they say, well, these were the things that changed my life when I was young. So here they are. Number one, and I call this the golden triangle of success. The golden triangle has 3 points. The top point is mental, and it is the acceptance of complete responsibility for yourself and your life. Refusal to make excuses, refusal to blame other people, refusal to be depressed or negative. Just simply say the magic words, I am responsible. I'm responsible. If I'm not happy with any part of my life, I'm responsible. Did somebody do you dirty? Did somebody treat you badly? Did you have a lousy childhood? Did your boss cheat you? Did you have a bad marriage? And so on and so forth. So, life sucks and then you die. Okay? We used to say life's a bitch and then you die. So therefore what you do is you just take a deep breath and you say, oh shoot, well, I am responsible. And the interesting thing is, blaming is the number one reason for unhappiness and failure in life. And as soon as you say, I am responsible, you cancel all blame. So whenever you start to become angry about anything, you say, whoa, wait a minute, I'm responsible. And it just stops it like one of those crash dummies going against a wall, whack. All your blaming stops. And when your blaming stops, which is the source of all negative emotions, when the negative emotions go, since nature abhors a vacuum, what comes into your mind? And the answer is positive emotions. And what are the positive emotions? Ambition, excitement, happiness, joy, energy, all the good things. But if you're blaming somebody for something that they did or didn't do to you, then people, one of the things in America, which is a great tragedy, is there's millions, maybe tens of millions of people who blame successful people for their failure. They say, oh, rich people are the reason I'm poor. Well, I got a news for you. Rich people have never seen you or heard about you in their whole life, and they have nothing to do with your being poor. The reason you're poor is because you're yourself. So here's the most important thing is accept responsibility. Just say, I am responsible. I am responsible. And you instantly cancel all negative emotions. And suddenly you're in complete control of your life and your thought. So I've read stories and biographies and autobiographies of rich people, and you read their stories, and there was a certain point in their life where they reached the line. And the line is between childhood and adulthood. And when you cross the line, you become an adult. Because when you stop blaming and criticizing other people, you become an adult. And from then on, you're in charge of your life. But as long as you're blaming your mother and your father and your boss and your spouse and everything else, you remain a child. You remain a whimpering, crying little child. And you get together and you drink and you whine and complain about your life. No. From now on, you say, I'm responsible. So that's the first part of the triangle. Without that, nothing is possible.
I love that we're starting with such a powerful intervention moment. And it's interesting how there seems to be a culture being nurtured in society today that's talking about how you're not responsible for this, you're not responsible for that, and the blame seems to be amplified. But at the same time, when I look at what changes happened in my life when I took that 100% responsibility, is you would think you're taking on extra burden, but it was actually a liberation. It was almost like giving myself freedom. And because the culture is encouraging the opposite, it feels like the pathways open up so easily when you make that one decision of being responsible. So to go back to the point you made earlier, how it's easier than ever to be a millionaire, I feel like, wow, this is probably the one that everyone should probably listen to again. It changes everything.
Right. Now, here's the triangle again. The second point of the triangle is if you're now responsible, what are you responsible for? And the answer is you're responsible for being clear about your goals and then achieving those goals. That's what you're responsible for. You're not responsible for being happy. You're responsible for setting goals, things that you really want to be and have and do. Now, I discovered this, I guess, 30 or 40 years ago. And what it simply said is that if you want to achieve goals, write them down. So what I did was this, and I've got this here from you. This is a spiral notebook. This costs less than $2, probably $1.50. If you are serious about becoming wealthy, this is your millionaire maker. And this is so powerful, it is scary. So what it said was basically write down your goals. And what I did is I made a habit from that day onward. I put today's date and I wrote down my 10 goals. Now, what I learned is that your subconscious mind can only accept a command when it is couched in the present tense. So you don't say, I will earn, I will weigh, I will do, I will achieve. You always say, I am a self-made millionaire by, and give yourself a reasonable date. Remember this, you can always change the date. No problem. You can always change the date and move it forward. So you write down your goals. And what I do is put in the day's date and then write down your 10 most important goals in life right now. Now, tomorrow, you do it again without reference to the previous list. You don't copy. This is not copying from one page to another. You close it, open it up, and write your 10 goals again. Surprise, surprise. Your goals are going to change their order. You're going to, because you're not remembering, and the description of your goals and the timing of your goals will change, and then you do it again. Now, in 2000, there was a .com, .bomb bust, and thousands of small entrepreneurs were driven to the verge of bankruptcy. So I started a group coaching program where I charged $5,000 a year to come and spend one day with me every 3 months. And I would work with 20 or 30 people at a time so that it was economically sensible for me. And they would come down and I would put them through a series of exercises. The first thing I would do is I'd say, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. And I want to introduce you to your new best friend. Here is your new best friend. And I would hand them out. And I would say, I want you to write down your goals. Write them, do them now, and then discuss them with the people at your table. I put 5 people at a round table facing forward. And so they'd all write down their 10 goals and they would discuss them. I said, good. Now from the next 3 months, I want you to write down your goals over and over again, just like we just talked about, without reference to the previous page. I said, if you'll do this, you'll double your income and you'll become wealthy. I used to get, they say, well, you're going to charge $5,000. Wow. That's what they do. They pay $5,000 to come and sit in a room with you 4 times a year. And how can I justify that amount? I said, I'll tell you what, if you do not double your income and double your time off with your family within the next 12 months, I'll give you your money back. No charge. Unconditionally guaranteed. No, you don't just have to say anything. Just say, I didn't get my money's worth. Bang, have your money back. I gave that program for 7 years to more than 1,000 entrepreneurs. I never had a refund request. Many people doubled their income in the first week. Most of them in a month. But all of them doubled and tripled their income. They couldn't believe it. When they came back to the second session 3 months later, the whole room was full of shining faces. Everybody was happy and they were laughing and they were joking because I've also taught them importance of personal responsibility, importance of managing your time, setting priorities, starting early, working harder, staying later, those things. And they were hungry. That's the most wonderful characteristic of successful people is they're hungry. They want it. They want to be successful. Anybody who's heard speakers has probably heard my friend Les Brown. And Les Brown has a book and he's got a talk and a seminar. And, Les has told me many times that he cut his teeth on my materials years, and all his children have been brought up on my materials. But his name of his talk is "You Gotta Be Hungry." You gotta be hungry, and he says it beautifully. He says, gets on the stage, and he's a big black guy. And he says, "You gotta be hungry if you want to be successful." Have you heard that?
I haven't heard him speak, actually, so I haven't. But I know of Les Brown, and I could imagine what kind of energy he brings to a room, for sure.
He is just great. I think he's the best motivational speaker in America. And why? And you're right, because he's right. You got to be hungry. If you're not hungry in a world where everybody's hungry, you haven't got a chance. You haven't got a chance.
I'd be curious to know your opinion on how there is a lot of advertising, marketing that gets sent to people. And it seems like for the hungry people, they're offering what is called fast food. I'm talking about the shortcuts, the get rich quick, and all of these things that get taunted for a lot of us that are hungry for that millionaire paycheck. And I'd be curious to know, what is your opinion on the fact that that exists? And